Hello class, today we're going to learn about the passive voice. In English, sometimes we don't want to say who does the action. Instead, we want to focus on the action or the objects that receive the action. So, the passive voice have changed the focus of the sentence. By the end of the lesson, you will know when and how to use the passive voice correctly. Our lesson will focus on three main parts. Part 1, definition. Part 2, passive voice in tenses. And Part 3, gerund passive and infinitive passive. First of all, definition of passive voice. Passive voice is used to describe a person or a thing that receives an action from someone. Let's start with the structure of passive voice. The formula is very simple. Be plus past participle. Notice that the verb be will change according to the tense of the sentence, but the main verb always stays in the past participle form. There are three things to remember when making a passive sentence. First, the object in the active sentence becomes the subject in the passive sentence. Second, the subject in the active sentence usually moves to the end of the passive sentence and is introduced with by, if you want to mention it. The last, the verb always changes into the form be plus past participle, and the verb be must agree with the tense of the original sentence. To make a correct passive sentence, you must keep in mind these three things. If you follow these three steps, your passive sentence will always be correct. Now, let's move to part 2, passive voice in tenses. We already know the basic formula, be plus past participle, right? But remember, the verb be must change according to the tense of the active sentence. Here is the summary table of the basic tenses in the passive voice. It shows you how be changes in each tense, while the main verb always stays in the past participle form. By looking at this table, you can quickly see the correct passive structure for every tense. This will help you transform active sentences into passive ones more easily. In the present simple passive, we use am, is, are plus past participle. Example: active. The documentary doesn't address global warming. Passive. Global warming isn't a threat in the documentary. So remember, am, is, are plus past participle. That's the present simple passive. In the past simple passive, we use was, were plus past participle. Notice in this example, the verb built in the active sentence has changed to was built in the passive sentence. Was show the past simple tense. Built is the past participle of the verb. So, to form a past simple passive sentence, we always use was, were plus past participle. Future simple passive. Subject plus will be plus past participle. Look at the example. The verb will reveal in the active sentence changes to will be revealed in the passive sentence. Will stays the same to show future tense. Be is added to form the passive, and review becomes the past participle. Present continuous passive. Subject am, is, are, being plus past participle. Look at example. Notice the verb change. Active are replacing. Passive are being replaced. Are stays the same for present tense. Add being to form the continuous passive. The main verb replace becomes past participle. Past continuous passive. Subject plus was, were, being plus past participle. Let's analyze the verb in the example. Active was fixing. Passive was being fixed. Was stay the same for past tense, as being to form the continuous passive. The main verb fix becomes past participle. Present perfect passive. Subject plus has, have, been plus past participle. Example. Active. They have completed a project. Passive. The project has been completed. The original subject, they, can be omitted if not necessary. Past perfect passive. Subject had, been, past participle. Notice the verb change in the example. Active, had moved. Passive, had been moved. Had stayed the same for past perfect tense. Add been to form the passive, and the main verb move stays in past participle. Now let's move to part 3, gerund passive and infinitive passive. So far we have learned how to form passive voice in different tenses. Next, we will see how to use the passive form of verbs with gerund and infinitive. This is important because in English, verbs can act as nouns, gerunds, or follow other verbs, infinitive, and we need to know how to make them passive correctly. Gerund passive, being plus past participle. For example, he enjoys being taken to the zoo on Sundays. To infinitive passive, to be plus past participle. For example, he wants to be taken to the zoo on Sundays. Bare infinitive passive, be plus past participle. Example, he will be taken to the zoo on tomorrow. That's the end of our lesson on passive voice. Goodbye.